what inmates eat at. Mississippi State Penitentiary. The gates open at exactly 5:12 a.m. Not for freedom, not for visitors, but for food. A rusted transport truck crawls through fog like something alive, its headlights cutting across rows of razor wire that stretch farther than the eye can see. Inside that truck are pallets of frozen chicken, boxes of powdered eggs, crates of white bread, and bags of something labeled simply as nutritional protein blend. This is Mississippi State Penitentiary. Locals call it Parchman. And for more than a century, this place has been synonymous with suffering. Built in 1901 on former plantation land, Parchman wasn't designed to rehabilitate. It was designed to extract labor. Inmates once picked cotton under armed guards, slept in wooden barracks, and ate meals that barely kept them standing. Today, the fields are gone, but the hunger remains. Over 3,000 men live behind these fences, many serving life sentences, some awaiting trial, some already forgotten by the outside world. And every single day, their survival depends on what comes through those gates. Because inside Parchman, food is more than nourishment. It's currency, it's control, it's power. Former inmates say your first lesson here isn't how to fight. It's how to eat, how to stretch a meal, how to trade a biscuit for soap, how to save half a sandwich for later, because tomorrow isn't guaranteed. But what exactly do inmates eat at one of America's most infamous prisons? And how did food become a silent weapon in a system already pushed to the brink? Before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoy true crime stories like this, be sure to like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who'd love it too. Mississippi State Penitentiary didn't start as a prison. It started as punishment. After the Civil War, Mississippi needed labor. So the state created a massive prison farm on 18,000 acres of Delta land. Inmates were leased out to work field, repair roads, and build railways. They were fed whatever was cheapest: cornbread, fatback, molasses, beans cooked until they turned gray. Nutrition wasn't a priority. Survival was optional. Parchman quickly earned a reputation. Escapes were rare. Violence was common. Guards carried rifles. Prisoners slept in cages. By the 1960s, civil rights lawsuits exposed brutal conditions. The federal government stepped in. Reforms were ordered. But even as the chains came off, the system stayed broken. Fast forward to modern day. Mississippi ranks near the bottom nationally in prison spending per inmate. And food budgets? They're among the lowest. According to state records, Mississippi allocates just a few dollars per prisoner per day for meals. That amount has to cover breakfast, lunch, dinner, and sometimes snacks. 3 meals, 1 budget, thousands of mouths. Something had to give. Breakfast at Parchman arrives before sunrise. A metal cart rattles down concrete hallways. Trays slide through slots in steel doors. No menus, no choices, just whatever the kitchen prepared that morning. Most days, it looks like this: 2 slices of white bread, a scoop of grits or instant oatmeal, powdered eggs mixed with water, sometimes a sausage link, sometimes not, milk that's already warming by the time it reaches the cell block. Former inmates describe the eggs as rubbery, the grits often undercooked, the bread stale more often than fresh. But hunger changes standards. Men eat quietly, saving half for later. Some wrap food in toilet paper and hide it in lockers. Others trade items across bars. Because breakfast isn't just a meal, it's inventory. And the smart ones already know what they'll need by nightfall. In 2019, something snapped. Videos leaked online showing inmates at Parchman standing in line for meals that never came. Reports emerged of moldy bread, undercooked chicken, trays missing entire food groups. Then the lawsuits began. Families claimed their loved ones were starving. Inmates said portions were shrinking. Correctional officers admitted staffing shortages meant meals were delayed or skipped entirely. And behind the scenes, vendors were cutting corners. Food contracts have been awarded to private companies promising to save the state millions. But former kitchen workers allege those savings came at a cost. Cheaper ingredients, smaller portions, expired supplies. One whistleblower claimed pallets of frozen meat sat unrefrigerated during delivery. Another said vegetables arrived already wilted. By early 2020, the Department of Justice launched an investigation into conditions at Mississippi prisons. Their findings were devastating. They cited unsafe living environments, lack of medical care, and systemic failures that placed inmates at serious risk. Food was part of it, but it wasn't the whole story. Because at Parchman, hunger wasn't accidental. It was structural. Lunch is the most anticipated meal of the day, not because it's good, but because it's filling. Usually, standard lunch trays often include a processed meat patty or bologna sandwich, a scoop of rice or pasta, canned vegetables, sometimes fruit, sometimes a cookie. The meat is often soy-based, blended with fillers to cut costs. Inmates call it mystery protein. It holds shape like beef, but tastes like cardboard. Still, men line up anyway, because refusing lunch means relying on commissary. And commissary costs money most inmates don't have. A single ramen noodle pack can go for triple its outside price. Peanut butter becomes gold. Tuna packets become bargaining chips. Entire underground economies form around food. One pack of noodles might get you laundry service. 2 might get protection. 3 could buy silence. This is where alliances form and betrayals begin. December 29th, 2019. Inmate death spike across Mississippi prisons. At Parchman, reports of unrest flood social media. Families can't reach loved ones. Phones go unanswered. Inside, inmates describe chaos. Cells flooding. Heating systems failing. Food deliveries delayed. Men already weak from malnutrition, now facing freezing temperatures. Some climbed onto rooftops holding signs begging for help. Others banged on doors for hours. When meals finally arrived, portions were smaller than ever. One former inmate later said that week taught him something permanent. It wasn't about surviving prison anymore, he said. It was about surviving hunger. Dinner comes late, sometimes after dark, usually a repeat of lunch in different form. Beans and rice, spaghetti with watery sauce, cornbread, occasionally chicken legs baked until dry. On paper, the meals meet caloric guidelines. In reality, inmates report losing weight rapidly, clothes hanging loose, faces hollowing out, energy fading. Men who once lifted weights now struggle to stand for count. And when dinner ends, the doors close. Silence takes over. That's when the stomach pain starts. That's when thoughts get loud. That's when some inmates cry quietly into their pillows. Because hunger doesn't just weaken the body, it breaks the mind. But here's the part most people don't know. Some inmates weren't just enduring the system. They were documenting it, smuggling notes, recording videos, tracking meal portions, keeping dates, keeping names. And one former kitchen worker was quietly saving delivery receipts. What those records revealed would eventually shock state officials and expose a pattern that went far beyond bad food. It pointed to something darker, something intentional. And it all started with a shipment that never officially arrived. It started with chicken, not just any chicken. 45 industrial cases, each weighing over 40 pounds. According to delivery logs, the shipment arrived at Mississippi State Penitentiary on a Tuesday morning in late October. But according to kitchen workers, it never reached cold storage. No one signed for it. No one unloaded it. And no one cooked it. The paperwork said it was there. The freezer inventory said it wasn't. At first, staff assumed it was a clerical error. But then it happened again. Boxes of frozen vegetables disappeared. Crates of apples never made it past intake. Milk shipments were listed as received but never served. Inside the prison, inmates felt it immediately. Meals grew smaller. Dinner trays lost their protein. Breakfast came without fruit. Lunch sandwiches shrank to half their usual size. But outside the walls, no alarms went off. Because missing food doesn't trigger emergency alerts. It just makes people hungry. His name was Marcus, not his real name. He was serving a 20-year sentence for armed robbery and had been assigned to kitchen duty for nearly 3 years. Marcus wasn't a troublemaker. He kept his head down, followed orders, counted trays. But when the food started disappearing, he noticed something strange. Delivery days didn't match serving days. He began writing things down on scraps of cardboard: dates, truck numbers, portion sizes, how many trays went out versus how many were prepared. At first, it was curiosity. Then it became concern. Then it became obsession. Marcus started comparing menus posted on the wall with what actually reached the housing units. On paper, inmates were supposed to receive chicken twice a week. In reality, it was once, sometimes none. Vegetables listed as fresh arrived canned. Milk cartons often expired. And every time a shipment went missing, a particular supervisor seemed to be on duty. Marcus didn't know why, but he knew it wasn't random. In prison, hunger changes behavior. Men who once avoided conflict now start fights over scraps. Younger inmates offer favors for extra bread. Older inmates retreat into themselves, conserving energy. Gangs tighten control over commissary access. Protection becomes transactional. One former inmate described it like this: when your stomach hurts all day, you stop thinking about rehabilitation. You start thinking about survival. Food decides who's strong, who's desperate, who's willing to do things they swore they never would. At Parchman, some inmates began stealing from kitchen carts. Others bribed workers. A few were caught hiding food in laundry bags. Punishment was swift: solitary confinement, loss of privileges, weeks without commissary. But the real punishment was already happening. They were starving. Outside the prison, a woman named Denise was making phone calls. Her son, Andre, had been incarcerated for 5 years. He used to sound hopeful during their weekly calls. But something changed. His voice grew weaker. He stopped talking about plans. He told her he was losing weight, that his clothes didn't fit anymore, that some nights dinner never arrived. Denise called the prison, left messages, sent emails. She contacted the Department of Corrections. No response. Then Andre told her something that chilled her. He said inmates were sharing food to keep each other alive. He said one man collapsed during count because he hadn't eaten in 2 days. Denise started posting online, tagging officials, sharing screenshots of unanswered messages. She wasn't alone. Other families joined in. Soon, hashtags began circulating. Journalists started asking questions. And suddenly, Mississippi couldn't ignore Parchman anymore. Marcus knew he was taking a risk. But when a civil rights organization contacted inmates asking for first-hand accounts, he reached out. He smuggled copies of his notes through legal mail, inventory logs, tray counts, dates of missing shipments. He described supervisors ordering staff to reduce portions. He explained how food budgets were being stretched beyond breaking. He even named names. Within weeks, investigators requested records from the prison, procurement contracts, vendor agreements, delivery schedules. What they found suggested something disturbing. Food vendors were billing the state for full shipments, but the prison was receiving partial loads. Somewhere between the warehouse and the cell block, food was vanishing, and it wasn't spoiling. It was being diverted. Mississippi's prison system had been underfunded for decades. Low pay meant high staff turnover. Shortages meant corners were cut. Oversight was minimal. Audits were rare. And when private contractors entered the picture, accountability became even harder to trace. Food services were outsourced. Transportation was subcontracted. Storage was handled by rotating crews. No single person had full visibility, which made it easy for small thefts to grow. A few cases here, a pallet there, until it added up to thousands of meals never served. But while paperwork stayed clean, bodies inside were wasting away. Marcus was transferred without warning. No explanation. Just packed up and moved to another unit. He lost kitchen access. Lost contact with investigators. 2 weeks later, Denise received a handwritten letter from another inmate. It said Andre had been hospitalized. Severe dehydration. Malnutrition. The letter ended with 4 words. They're letting us starve. That was the moment Denise broke down. And that was the moment the story crossed a line. By early 2020, the Department of Justice officially declared Mississippi's prisons unconstitutional. They cited dangerous living conditions, failure to protect inmates, and inadequate access to basic necessities. Food was now part of a federal investigation. Officials promised reform. New contracts were announced. Oversight committees were formed. But change inside Parchman moved slowly, because bureaucracy doesn't feel hunger. Inmates do. One former guard described walking to the housing unit at 1 a.m. He saw men awake in their bunks, not talking, not fighting, just staring. He asked one inmate what was wrong. The man said, "I'm trying to sleep through the hunger." That sentence stayed with him. So, what do inmates at Mississippi State Penitentiary actually eat? Officially, processed meats, soy-based proteins, white bread, rice, beans, canned vegetables, powdered drinks, occasional fruit. Unofficially, ramen noodles crushed into soups, peanut butter sandwiches traded in silence, tuna mixed with chips, instant coffee brewed in plastic bags, food saved for emergencies, meals stretched across days, hope rationed like sugar packets. They eat what they're given. They eat what they can trade. And sometimes they don't eat at all. Andre survived. Barely. He was released months later on parole. He had lost over 30 pounds. His mother didn't recognize him at first. He told her he still wakes up at night thinking about dinner trays, still hoards food in his kitchen cabinets, still feels panic when the fridge is empty, because prison taught him something the world never prepared him for. Hunger doesn't end when the gates open. It follows you home. Every prison has two systems, the one on paper and the one that actually works. At Mississippi State Penitentiary, food is the backbone of the unofficial economy, because when meals are unreliable, value shifts. Ramen noodles become currency. Peanut butter becomes leverage. Instant coffee becomes comfort and control. In some housing units, one ramen pack equals a phone call. 2 equals laundry service. 5 can buy protection for a week. The shortage didn't just create hunger, it created hierarchy. Inmates with outside support thrived. Those without families faded. And the prison quietly divided itself into the fed and the forgotten. Correctional officers saw it happening. Some tried to stop it. Others ignored it. And a few allegedly profited from it. Former inmates and staff later describe a routine that never appeared in official reports. Certain food carts never made it to housing units. They took a detour, a side corridor, a storage room near the loading dock. There, food disappeared, not into trash bins, but into personal vehicles, coolers, unmarked boxes, according to allegations later raised in affidavits. Some guards resold food outside the prison. Others traded it for favors inside. No cameras, no witnesses willing to testify publicly, because inside Parchman, being labeled a snitch can be a death sentence. So the system survived on silence. And hunger. After his transfer, no one heard from Marcus for weeks. The organization assisting with the investigation received no further messages. His legal mail stopped. Then a short update arrived through a third party. Marcus had been placed in administrative segregation. No charges, no explanation. 23 hours a day in a concrete cell. 1 meal slot, 1 tray, cold food, smaller portions. The message ended with a warning. They know. For the first time, the investigation stalled. Because without witnesses, corruption hides easily. Public memory remembers Parchman for riots, fires, chaos. But insiders say the unrest wasn't driven by anger. It was driven by desperation. When food becomes uncertain, order collapses. Men don't riot because they want chaos. They riot because they're trying to be seen. During the worst unrest, inmates weren't demanding luxury. They were demanding consistency. 3 meals, every day. That's it. In the aftermath, Mississippi released statements, promised reform, cited improvements, but buried in a long federal report, was a line most people missed. It said inmates were at substantial risk of serious harm due to inadequate nutrition. That sentence mattered, because it meant hunger was an accident. It was a violation. For a brief moment, things improved. Portions increased. Fresh food appeared. Fruit trays returned. But cameras don't stay forever. Journalists moved on. Budgets tightened again. And quietly, portions shrank. Because systemic problems don't disappear. They wait. Months after his release, Andre told his mother something he'd never admitted. He said there were nights he considered hurting himself not because of despair, but because the infirmary had food. Soup, crackers, juice. Hearing that broke her, because it revealed the cruelest truth of all. Hunger doesn't just punish the body. It distorts the mind. 2 years later, Marcus's name appeared in a court filing. He had been released early due to time served in good behavior. No interviews. No statements. Just a note attached to the record. Witness unavailable. Some say he signed a non-disclosure agreement. Others say he just wanted to disappear. Because surviving Parchman didn't make him brave. It made him tired. So here's the uncomfortable truth. Food in prison isn't just about budgets. It's about control. When you control meals, you control energy. You control resistance. You control hope. And when a system is allowed to neglect food, it reveals what it truly values. One former inmate described his final day at Parchman. His release papers were signed. His property bag was packed. Dinner arrived late. Cold beans. Rice. No meat. He ate slowly, not because he enjoyed it, but because it was the last time food would be served through steel bars. He said he felt relief and guilt because others were still inside, still waiting, still hungry. This isn't just about Mississippi. It's about what happens when punishment becomes neglect, when survival becomes conditional, when hunger is normalized. Because prisons don't disappear people. They eventually return them. And the trauma they carry doesn't stay behind bars. Mississippi State Penitentiary was built in a different century, a time when prisons were plantations, when punishment meant labor, when inmates were seen as resources, not people. Over 100 years later, the walls still stand, the fences still hum, the towers still watch. Parchman survived segregation, survived lawsuits, survived federal oversight, and somehow it survived hunger too, because institutions don't change just because the world does. They change only when forced. After the DOJ findings, Mississippi announced reforms, new vendors, updated menus, increased oversight. They released photos of plated meals, fresh fruit, chicken dinners, balanced trays. But former inmates said those meals were temporary. They appeared when inspectors visited, then vanished, because oversight isn't a moment, it's a commitment, and commitment costs money. One correctional officer resigned after 6 years. He later spoke anonymously. He said the hardest part wasn't violence. It wasn't overcrowding. It was watching grown men fade. He described inmates who stopped eating because the food made them sick, others who saved scraps like children in war zones. He said he once gave his own lunch to an inmate who hadn't eaten all day, then got written up for it. That's when he knew the system wasn't broken. It was functioning exactly as designed. Parchman holds men whose fathers were incarcerated there, and grandfathers. Same land, same soil, same echoes. What changes is the menu, but not the message. That some lives are cheaper. That hunger is acceptable collateral. That accountability ends at the gate. Denise keeps a cardboard box in her closet. Inside are Andre's prison letters, medical paperwork, photos taken the day he came home. She also keeps one plastic tray. An inmate smuggled it out during a transfer and mailed it to her. It's cracked, scratched, stained. She says it reminds her what almost took her son. She doesn't display it. She doesn't talk about it publicly. But sometimes she opens a box just to remind herself he survived. Andre found work after his release. He tries to live normally, but trauma doesn't clock out. He eats fast, always finishes his plate, gets anxious when groceries run low. He still can't waste food, not even bread, not even rice, because prison taught him scarcity, and scarcity rewires the brain. 2 years after the investigation began, auditors quietly released their conclusions. Several procedural failures, poor inventory tracking, lack of supervision, but no major criminal charges, no dramatic arrests, no televised accountability, just recommendations, because systems rarely punish themselves. Here's what no official report includes. Hunger teaches patience. Hunger teaches obedience. Hunger teaches silence. When people are tired and underfed, they don't organize. They endure, and endurance looks like compliance. Mississippi saved money on food, but paid in lawsuits, hospital bills, federal oversight, and damaged lives. Every underfed inmate eventually returns to society, carrying anger, carrying trauma, carrying survival instincts sharpened by deprivation. You don't starve people and expect peace. Because here's the truth most viewers won't expect. The story of Parchman isn't really about inmates. It's about us. It's about what happens when punishment replaces humanity, when budgets matter more than bodies, when we look away because the suffering is out of sight. The food trays at Mississippi State Penitentiary didn't just feed prisoners. They revealed a mirror. Months after his release, Marcus sent one final message to the organization that tried to help him. It was short. He said, "They didn't take my freedom. They took my appetite for life." Then he disappeared. Parchman is still open. Meals are still served. Men still wait in line. Some days are better. Some days aren't. But hunger still lives there. Quiet, persistent, invisible. Because when you ask what inmates eat at Mississippi State Penitentiary, the answer isn't just beans and bread. They eat loss. They eat neglect. They eat silence. And every tray carries the weight of a system that decided survival could be rationed. There's a long stretch of road outside Parchman. Flat land, empty fields, no signs, no memorials, just asphalt cutting through silence. When inmates are released, they're driven down that road in unmarked vans. No ceremony, no apology, just a gate open behind them and a world that expects them to forget. Andre remembers that drive. He said the sky felt too big. The air felt unreal. And the first thing he noticed wasn't freedom. It was how quiet his stomach was. Andre's first meal on the outside was fast food. A burger, fries, a soda. He cried in the parking lot. Not because it tasted good, but because no one controlled it. No tray slot, no count, no guard watching. Just choice. Something prison had taken from him for years. He still eats that same meal on his release anniversary. Every year, he calls it his reminder. For every Andre who makes it out, hundreds remain. Some will age behind bars. Some will die there. Some are innocent. Some are guilty. But all of them eat from the same trays. All of them depend on the same system. And all of them feel hunger the same way. It doesn't ask what you did. It just hurts. There are no documentaries filming every meal. No viral clips of cold rice and dry bread. No breaking news alerts when portions shrink. Because suffering without spectacle is easy to ignore. Prisons exist on the edge of public consciousness. Out of sight, out of mind, until something explodes. Yes, Mississippi adjusted policies. Yes, vendors were reviewed. Yes, oversight technically increased. But Parchman is still overcrowded. Staff shortages still exist. Budgets are still tight. And meals still depend on contracts written far away from the people who eat them. Systems don't heal overnight. They slowly revert. That plastic tray tells a story. Divided into sections. Measured. Controlled. One space for protein. One for starch. One for vegetables. It looks ordinary. But inside prison, it represents everything. Power, dependence, survival. When that tray is full, men can think. When it's empty, everything else falls apart. We're taught that prison is about punishment, about accountability, about justice. But justice doesn't require starvation. Accountability doesn't demand neglect. And punishment shouldn't erase dignity, because what happens inside those walls eventually comes back outside, in trauma, in anger, in broken families, in people who are forced to learn survival instead of healing. Denise still prays every night, not just for her son, but for the men still inside. She says she doesn't pray for revenge. She prays for decency, for consistency, for 3 meals a day. Because after everything she witnessed, she understands something simple. Food is not a privilege. It's a human need. So the next time someone asks, "What do inmates eat at Mississippi State Penitentiary?" remember this. They eat whatever arrives. They eat whatever survives transport. They eat whatever isn't stolen. They eat whatever fits the budget. But more than that, they eat the consequences of a system we all help fund. Behind those gates are thousands of lives, not statistics, not headlines, lives. And every meal served at Parchman carries a silent message. How much are they worth? Because in the end, a society isn't judged by how it treats the powerful. It's judged by how it feeds the forgotten. If this story meant something to you, please subscribe, share, and drop a comment. Your support helps these stories be heard.